The point of view switches to Mr. Wu and his team who have arrived on the scene of the double dungeon. He assembled 7 elite hunters from the association who were available on short notice, but he already knew deep down inside they were not going to be enough to help Jinwoo. He was just preparing for a worst case scenario. Suddenly an ominous aura begins emanating from the gate. Mr. Wu begins shaking and his soldiers are starting to worry if he's okay or not. He thinks to himself, what is this? Is anyone else picking this up? Where is this bone-chilling aura coming from? I feel a terrible storm of mana. And behind him you see a Grim Reaper looking figure. He asks, are there any major guilds nearby on standby? Someone replies, yes, the Hunters Guild is on standby to raid. Mr. Wu responds, what about their 2 S-rank hunters? He says Mr. Choi Jong-in and Miss Cha Hae-in have both agreed to participate. He tells them to put an emergency request in with the Hunters Guild immediately. Then he thinks to himself, Jinwoo, what are you up to? The point of view switches back to the dungeon where we see Jinwoo staring down the hooded statue, and his arms are moving around side to side at almost a blurring speed. Jinwoo looks a little bit nervous but prepared. The statue cracks that devilish smile again, and then suddenly he disappears and reappears right in the face of Jinwoo. He immediately launches multiple punches that Jinwoo is narrowly able to block, but the hooded figure isn't done. He drives the punches through, which slams Jinwoo across the room. Jinwoo is visibly stunned, and honestly I can't remember the last time he's taken damage like this. The hooded figure gives him no time to think as he continues his assault. Jinwoo dodges the next round, but the fists keep coming and coming until he's caught in a flurry of punches from the statue's 8 arms. And he is not letting up. He is firing punch after punch. But suddenly that devilish grin turns to shock as he sees Jinwoo is blocking and dodging all of the punches he's firing at him. And you see the look in Jinwoo's eye went from being dazed to being completely locked in. The architect says, truly impressive, you were exceeding all my expectations. He finally manages to catch Jinwoo with a punch to the face, but Jinwoo doesn't allow it to give him an opening, and instead he returns the favor with a punch to the face as well. And this one sends the architect flying back. The architect says, who knew I'd have so much fun fighting against a human being? Not once in my many years of life did I think a human could be a worthy opponent. Then he smiles with a crazy look on his face, saying how very amusing. Jinwoo thinks to himself, this guy invited me here as soon as I reached level 101. He probably thought I was no match for him, but I can do this. Then he says, hey architect, I still got loads to ask you. Why did you construct the system? And why did you choose me as the player? And what's happening to the world right now? The architect says, you really want to know? I see. Maybe you think you might not get all the answers if you kill me. And at this point, he's launched himself back in Jinwoo's direction. Jinwoo says close combat puts me at a disadvantage. So to keep him at a distance, he activates Commander's authority. But the architect says, nah, are you planning to attack from a distance? It's no use. And he activates Commander's authority as well. And as you can see, it's almost as if the two canceled each other out. Jinwoo thinks to himself, he can use the same skills as me, and that means my long distance attacks are pointless too. The architect says it doesn't matter whether you kill me or not. And as he says this, you see the weapons of the falling soldiers slowly beginning to levitate. And he says the answers you will receive are already predetermined. And now with all 8 arms wielding weapon, he says they've been predetermined since the moment I first designed everything. And Jinwoo asks, how were you able to design all this? And how were you able to give me such powers? The architect says, I didn't choose you. In fact, I was against the idea. I am simply the architect and the moderator of the player breeding system. My design is perfect. Jinwoo checks the timer and there's about 6 minutes left and he thinks to himself, I don't have time, I have to face him head on. The architect leaps in the air and says, I'm going to use full force for the remaining time. He slams all 8 weapons onto the ground, creating a massive shockwave. Jinwoo leaps in the air himself to dodge the shockwave and now they're engaged in a clash. Then suddenly a spark awakens in Jinwoo and he's like, what is going on? All of my senses are getting stronger. I can actually do this. Then he begins counting out the weapons: longsword, spear, blade, axe, hammer. I can sense all his movements now. And as he's thinking this, he's dodging the architect's attacks almost effortlessly. And for the very first time, we see the architect visibly shaken up. He's thinking to himself, I'm using full force. How is he able to block all of my blows and then attack in response? And on top of that, he's getting even faster. And you see Jinwoo moving around so fast that he's barely visible, slicing off each of his 8 arms one by one. The architect says, even though I'm inside a fake body, I can't believe he's inflicting this much pain on me. And then he notices something about Jinwoo. He thinks to himself, could this be why you were chosen? There's only a fraction, but it's mixed in there, I see it. Then he yells in outrage, you're just a mere human, how dare you? The clock is now showing 3 minutes and 45 seconds and the stone soldiers that were already defeated are now coming back to life. Even the colossal laser beam statue begins to get active. The clock is winding down closer to 3 minutes and Jinwoo begins sprinting towards the giant. He remembers what happened last time he got active. He's like, I cannot let you do that shit again. He raises his hand to activate the commander's authority and slams his fist into the ground, sending all surrounding soldiers back. He continues his dash around and the giant tries to stop him with the fist, but he's way too fast. Jinwoo simply leaps around and keeps moving. At this point, I think he knows he has to end the architect before the time runs out. Fuck all these other soldiers. He reaches the architect and severs off 2 more arms. But while doing so, the architect catches him with a slash to the stomach. Jinwoo reels in pain, but he doesn't let that slow anything down. Then suddenly he sees a familiar giant shield-bearing statue behind him. And he has a flashback to the first time he was in the double dungeon, and this one almost took his life. He instinctively launches himself in the air and smashes his elbow through his skull. The architect sees this and is visibly surprised, maybe even a little bit worried at this point. Jinwoo turns around and slices off 2 more arms. Then we see this massive explosion in the exact same spot where the 2 are. And when the dust settles, Sung Jinwoo has his sword at the neck of the architect with 2 minutes and 14 seconds remaining. The architect submits. He says, "I've lost. The test is now over." Now defeated, the architect points at Sung Jinwoo and says, "The answer is within you." Jinwoo replies, "Within me," and then you see the system offer a message that says the data stored in your memory will be retrieved, except yes or no. And the architect smiles and says, "The choice is yours." The message pops up again, "The data in your memory will be retrieved, except yes or no." And Jinwoo is confused. He said, "Data stored in my memory?" He thinks it over for a quick second, but of course we all know what his answer is going to be. "Yes," he says, "I accept." A new message pops up on the system. It says the data has been successfully retrieved, and we see a brilliant flash of light from either the architect or Sung Jinwoo, or maybe both. It's kind of hard to tell. We see Jinwoo slowly falling into a trance, almost as if he's losing consciousness. He wakes up in an astral form in a completely different world, and below him are hordes, I mean hordes, of magic beasts. Jinwoo says, "Oh my god, look at all those magic beasts." When he focuses in, it's almost as if the magic beasts are staring at something. And he asks himself, what are they looking at? And then his eyes hone in on what they're looking at. Above them is a massive purple and black sky with multiple vortexes in the middle. And it looks very similar to the openings of gates. And again, there are literally magic beasts of all different types as far as the eye can see. Jinwoo says, "A purple sky and hordes of beasts. This can't be planet Earth." If this army made up of ice elves, high orcs, goblins, giants, and many other types of magic beasts were to break out of the gate all at once, the human race wouldn't stand a chance against them. And the funny thing is, they aren't even after humans. Suddenly the vortex in the sky begins to break. Then we're given words that feel like Sung Jinwoo speaking in third person. It didn't take me long to figure out what would happen next. And then suddenly an army of some form of winged being breaks out of the gate and completely fills the skies above the horde of magic beasts. When you get a closer look, they're faceless, but they look very similar to angels. Jinwoo is completely stunned by what he's seeing. He has no thoughts or words. One of the winged beings lifts a horn to his lips and begins letting that motherfucker ring. And everybody around knew what that meant. The war begins now. The beasts rallied together to fight against the silver soldiers, and chaos ensued. The sounds of clashing weapons and crushed armor filled the air. Pools of blood began to stain the battlefield as the war cries quickly turned into screams of agony. The silver soldiers were beyond powerful. They were completely dominating the battle, but just as the end drew near for the beast, the silver soldiers suddenly came to a halt one by one. The battlefield went from chaotic to silent in an instant, to the point where you could hear the hooves of a lone horse. And when we finally see the horse, it looks very similar to Sung Jinwoo's shadows. And then we hear that iconic phrase, "Wakey wakey." My bad, y'all, I couldn't help myself. "Arise." Now mind you, Jinwoo was watching this from above the entire time, and at this point he's like, what the fuck is going on? Notices the monarch's domain seeping across the battlefield, immediately followed by something he knows all too well, shadow extraction. Then slowly but surely we start to see all the failed magic beasts reanimated in that black and purple shadowy color. Jinwoo thinks to himself, does this mean he's a monarch of shadows? Finally shown an image of the man who said arise, and he's wearing ironclad from head to toe. While riding his shadow steed, I'm not gonna lie, he might be going aura for aura with Sung Jinwoo right now. Then we're shown the words immortality, an army that never dies. Magic beasts sacrificed their lives, but death wasn't the end for them. Their blood grew dark and dense, granting them a newfound strength. In the skies above, Jinwoo marvels at how many shadow soldiers he's able to summon. He says to himself, I'm nothing compared to him. Which doesn't sound very aura-like of Sung Jinwoo, I understand, but in his defense, y'all saw how many magic beasts were in that horde. Literally as far as the eye can see, and so many that it just looks like a sea of black and red. The fallen beasts emerge from death's embrace and storm towards the silver soldiers. We're shown the magic beasts regenerating after being attacked by the silver soldiers. Black and silver armies became entangled in a fierce battle. Explosions erupted and the ground shook beneath them. The appearance of a single individual turned the tides. And we're shown this mysterious shadow monarch, this time donning a gigantic blade. With that blade, he's able to slash multiple silver soldiers at a time. He's just riding his shadowy horse, decimating the enemy lines. He reaches out with a very familiar looking glowing purple hand. In front of him, multiple enemies are crushed out the air and slammed on the ground. Jinwoo, again watching from above, says that's the commander's authority. Shadow soldiers repeated the cycle of death and revival to wipe out their enemies. Wherever the monarch went, a trail of destruction was left in his wake. Victory seemed imminent for the monarch of shadows and magic beasts. It is, until they showed up. One of you then switches back to the gates of the double dungeon. Choi Jong-in asks Mr. Wu, "Are we sure about this? I'm sensing a tremendous amount of mana, and you said Sung Jinwoo's inside, right?" Mr. Wu says, "Yes, I'm sure of it." Cha-hae-in says, "This mana isn't Sung Jinwoo's. But then who does it belong to?" Continues, "A double dungeon, huh? I guess I'll finally be able to see if the rumors are true." Mr. Wu says, "Sung Jinwoo told me he wasn't the one who cleared the double dungeon." We're shown a flashback of when Jinwoo first came out the dungeon and he was getting questioned about what the hell happened. Makes Mr. Wu question, so then, why did he come back here? It can't just be a coincidence, he says as they push open the doors. Almost immediately, Choi Jong is like, "What the hell is that? What is this place?" All you see is the wreckage of Jinwoo's battle versus the architect. Mr. Wu says, "So it's true. The statue of God and the stone sculptures actually exist." And suddenly they hear the voice of the architect say, "Oh, what is this? I don't recall inviting humans here." Another unexpected surprise. Hunters are completely freaked out because they've never heard a magic beast speak. They say, "Am I hearing things, or did that magic beast just talk?" Another one says, "It knows the human language?" The architect says, "How dare you disturb the king in his slumber?" Everyone's confused. They're like, "King, what?" The point of view pans to Sung Jinwoo, who is standing in the middle of the room glowing. One of the hunters says, "It's Sung Jinwoo. What is he doing over there?" Before he can finish his sentence, he gets hit with a slash faster than the eye can track. The architect went through and attacked 3 out of the 6 people there. Mr. Wu, Cha-hae-in, and Choi Jong. Cha-hae, stunned and confused, gathers her stance to prepare for battle. I think what happened was he tried to attack all 6 but only connected with the weaker hunters. The chapter saying, "You strong humans will make an excellent first offering to the king." The point of view switches back to Sung Jinwoo and the other mysterious shadow monarch. Suddenly in the sky above their heads, 2 large gates open up, one red and one blue. The blue gate cracks first and you slowly begin to see the flags of an army marching out. Now a third army is entering the battle, this time clad in demon armor. This is familiar to Sung Jinwoo. He says the Ricardo, Pitos, Roken, Ingress, and even the Rediro clan Isul belong to. Before he could even make sense of what marched through the blue gate, the red gate began to crack as well. This time with a giant white wolf bursting through, and behind him a brand new horde of magic beasts. We're shown the leader of the demon army who came through the blue gate wearing white clad armor. So alongside the demon army is a brand new army of magic beasts and a giant white wolf. And we're shown the mysterious shadow monarch staring both armies down. Point of view switches back to the double dungeon where the healers are trying to help out their fallen comrades. Choi Jong-in is taking command. He said, "Use everything you got, heal them and move them back to the back." At the bottom you see 2 healers currently working on Myung-ko. Suddenly more stone soldiers arise and they're making their way towards the hunters. Behind them is the giant stone statue that even gave Jinwoo problems. Architect says, "Anyone who's still alive by the time all my puppets collapse will be given the great honor of witnessing the king's birth." The giant statue's eyes begin to glow as he prepares to fire a laser. Architect adds, "That is, provided any of you actually survive until the time is up." Choi Jong is the first one to see what's going on. He tells everyone to watch out. The giant fires his laser beam and we see it slowly moving closer and closer to the hunters. Not gonna lie, for the first time ever, Choi Jong gets active. He snaps his fingers and fires one of the biggest explosions he can muster, which does just enough to halt the path of the giant's laser beams. Then tells his comrades to use this chance to destroy the stone statues. Then see Mr. Wu spring into action. He launches himself in the direction of the nearest statue and punches him in the face. He quickly finds out that these statues are a lot sturdier than they look. Choi Jong follows up with a fire blast that gives Mr. Wu some time to escape. He alerts his team that these guys have a high resistance to physical attacks. Dust settles on the face of the soldier he just attacked and he realizes that they can withstand fire magic as well. This makes him question, does this mean they also have a resistance to spell attacks? 2 of the other hunters alerted Choi Jong that they're experiencing the same situation. The male hunter said, "None of my provocation skills are working on them." The lady hunter said, "My basic psychokinetic spells don't have any effect either. They won't budge." Jong says, "Does this mean we're all out of options?" He looks at Sung Jinwoo and says, "We have to wake him up." Wonders if he's been hypnotized or something, but there's no time for that. Fires a blast in his direction and says, "Well, whatever it is, this is the only way to wake him up right now." Just as the blast is about to hit Sung Jinwoo, something intercepts it. Choi Jong-in is taken aback by what he sees. The architect jumped in the line of fire to protect Sung Jinwoo from the blast. And now while launching himself in the direction of Mr. Choi, he says, "How dare you try to disturb the king's slumber." Right before he can connect with Mr. Choi, he too is intercepted. At the very last second, Mr. Wu and 2 other hunters manage to push the architect back. Mr. Wu then gives orders to Cha-hae-in. He tells her to go wake Sung Jinwoo up while we distract the architect. Cha-hae-in is the fastest person there, so it makes the most sense. She says got it and heads towards Sung Jinwoo's location. From her point of view, we see her getting closer and closer to where Sung Jinwoo is standing. And then just as she gets close enough to wake him up, the point of view switches back to astral Sung Jinwoo. All-out battle has now ensued between the Shadow Army and the Magic Beast Army. Jinwoo said the shadows keep on regenerating no matter how many times they get destroyed. If those had been my soldiers, I would have run out of mana a while ago. It's almost as if he's a bottomless pit of mana. At this point, Jinwoo is a little bit confused with what he's saying. Demon tribes and magic beasts that came out of the gates are now slaughtering the shadow soldiers, but it didn't seem like they had a reason to fight each other. This war was between the beasts and the silver soldiers. Jinwoo starts to come to a realization. He says, so the Monarch of Shadows wasn't on the same side as the magic beasts? Or maybe there was some sort of internal conflict? The war continued to rage on until there seemed to be a clear victor between the demon army and the shadow army. The leader of the demon clans is now on the ground and we see the shadow monarch slowly walking in his direction. He says, we had a chance to end this war today, so why did you betray me? The leader of the demon clans laughs and says, what a shame, I could have done away with you. Shadow monarch repeats his question, why did you betray me? Demon leader laughs again and we start to see whatever he's saying glitch. At this point it's a little bit hard to tell if the Shadow Monarch can understand what he's saying. Suddenly the Shadow Monarch grabs the demon leader by the neck and the point of view switches from third person to first person. The leader of the demon clans is still speaking in a language or a way or a glitch that we can't understand. Shadow Monarch pauses for a quick second and proceeds to squeeze the life out of the demon. And while the life is being squeezed out of his body, we see Sung Jinwoo say, those eyes, where have I seen them? He drops him to the ground and removes his mask. When he lifts his head, Jinwoo knows exactly who he is. It's Baran, the Demon King. He questions to himself, what is Baran doing here? Something weird is going on and Jinwoo starts to notice the point of view change. He begins to evaluate his own hands that have now been bloodied from battle. Somehow he is taking the place of the Shadow Monarch and he thinks to himself, since when? Why did I notice until now? A purple orb begins to glow on the right side of his chest. It pushes itself deeper and deeper into Sung Jinwoo's body, until it reached the point of being snuggled directly adjacent to his heart. Jinwoo is confused and trying to figure out what exactly is going on, but he doesn't have time for that. As more silver soldiers just pulled up and it's time to get back to the action. It is until suddenly the system sends a message and says playback of the retrieved data has ended.